So robots.
God damn it. That was, I don't know why that was so fucking demoralizing to go through.
What was the rest, the information I sent out?
I think the fact that I finished with that woman.
Oh yeah.
Like, that was the last thing I watched. She was just annoying the fuck out of me.
Okay, so let's talk about sex, right? Let's talk about the future of sex.
It takes a lot for me to not to dislike an Australian. I will just say that. They are usually such chillers, but wow, she was so
That was awful.
Welcome to What's Left, the weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson, teacher and writer Jessica, and community organizing socialist Kenny Cepeda. We're online at what-s-left.webno.com. You can find the link to our blog in the episode notes. I invite folks to subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, share your favorite episode, and jot down our information where you found this episode. You can always leave us comments in the episode notes in the episode comment section below. Thank you. So this is part 3 of a series that we're doing on sex work, on the sex industry, and the future of sex, as well as AI and everything in between, as I report here from Colombia. And we've had amazing conversations. Last week, we had a discussion around sex, class, and shame. And it was the 3 of us that discussed that. So maybe since we didn't have Kenny on last, and I know that there was a sparked conversation from the part 1, maybe then we can have Kenny respond to a question that was of an inquiry that we had on part 1, and then part 2 we further discuss. So maybe Kenny can then answer that. And if I remember correctly, if I'm going to frame this question, the question is around whether sex work is distinct in its nature versus other forms of work.
Yeah, I think that's what sparked the conversation, right? Because I made a comment about McDonald's and sex work. And I feel like even in the first episode, I try to clarify that, not that I don't care. It's just, for me, it's about finding the commonality in these issues, in exploitation, in the predatory forces in society. And, I just felt the need that I needed to clarify myself again, because it also steered a bunch of things, because in that last episode, you guys, you brought it up, Eduardo, this comparison that I made in the first episode, and it stirred a lot of things in me, because one, I felt like I wasn't clear enough, but at the same time, it's like, that's part of doing this, right? Like, you will say things, and what I did appreciate was, how you gave me the benefit of the doubt, in terms of what I meant, and what I am about, and but that episode was emotionally, I guess, it was very emotional, because it provoked a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, because I was worried that I was gonna be misunderstood, as a person who doesn't care, and but and at the same time, it brought me back to the COVID stuff, because a lot of people who I organized with, who I did a lot of work with, didn't give me that chance that you did, the space that you said, I know Kenny, I know what Kenny's about. And so that made me emotional, because to me, I do this out of care. I do, the work I've done, I do it out of love. And it just, it's still like a sensitive area for me to be canceled potentially, or just labeled as this person, but I also just appreciated the honesty that you guys had in that episode. I think it's not easy to talk about these things, even among us, because it is very sensitive things. We have different degrees of tolerance, different degrees of comfort around sex, and this is a very sensitive topic, because there's something very intimate, right? That people keep to themselves generally, or the very close people that they trust. But I guess that's kind of the gist of it. I'm not I think Lipson did a pretty good job of kind of explaining kind of what I meant, although he wasn't trying to explain myself. But it was more, for me, it's about finding the commonalities, because for me, like, this is a conversation about safety, self-determination, about freedom, and fighting all the predatory forces in society and creating a society that affords people the safety, that we all deserve to determine their own lives, and live it as best as they can. And so that's it, I guess. I think there was so much covered that I don't know if I can pick and we reopen another rabbit hole, but I guess that's all I would say.
First off, Kenny, I'm really glad you brought it up. I'm glad you brought up the McDonald's thing, because where you went was exactly where it helped me go where I needed to go in order to find where I'm at with this subject. Because it really is, I find it very helpful to say, how does the demeaning area of this work relate to the other areas of demeaning areas of work? But what's even more important, I think, Kenny, is to bring up the threat of cancellation. I think I can understand how, like, because you've just been through rounds of being exiled from communities, how that fear could come up even among us, right? Because you're hearing that, oh, I might have said something that somebody misheard. Now the dominoes fall in this way, and before you know it, I'm out. So I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that I'm glad you are saying, hey, Eduardo, thanks for giving me the benefit of the doubt.
I was going to ask you, Kenny, if you felt like you needed to further expand on your comments from part one, or you felt as if Andy sort of already covered what you wanted to say. You don't have to expand anything. I'm just asking because I thought there might just be that if you wanted to. But if you feel like there's nothing more to say, then there's nothing more to say.
I mean, I think, again, what I brought up right now is what I wanted to say, is because I did feel a little vulnerable in the sense because I wasn't in that space to clarify in the moment. And honestly, like, backtracking would take us having that conversation again, because there are areas where I would challenge some stuff, but I wasn't in the moment, and like, as much as I don't edit stuff, on the show, I felt like I was in a moment that you've been previously, where something I felt was mischaracterizing me or potentially mischaracterizing me. But at the same time, I'm like, well, the people who know what I'm about, they know what I'm about, and they will see, hopefully, coherence in my ideas, even if they disagree with me. Like, I try to clarify it in the first episode that I wasn't saying that I don't care about sex, or that I don't think it's damaging, or that I'm just diminishing and simplifying it. Oh, my point is that I'm about what the common goals are, because if we go and everyone, like, again, if we play Operation Olympics, that's the biggest fear I have, that if we go that road, it doesn't go anywhere. It goes in a circle, and because people go through different levels of trauma in so many ways, and also no group is a monolith. All women are not a monolith, all men are not a monolith. In there's class, like, not all women, for example, face the same levels of oppression. Like, a person from, like, a rural area in Central America doesn't face the same oppression as a fucking, Kamala Harris. Like, and all these things get complicated. So that's where I'm concerned about, like, going down this rabbit hole that, like, skirts around identity politics. That's all I would say. And that was kind of the point I wanted to make, about that. And I think we have to be careful. Otherwise, it's just finger pointing, shaming. And, for example, even just using this idea of, oh man, it's like, then we're just blaming people for being born, and being born a certain way. And then we go back in a full circle into this. And I think we're going to talk about it, changing your identity, changing who you are, who you were born into this world, because there is shame in it. And so I think there is, I'm just very, like, cautious and sensitive to that. And not only because of the political implications, but also because but because of the personal attacks I've received as just existing in certain spaces just for being a man, without even opening my mouth ever. And that's not a solution for anybody, because even good men will resist any sort of censorship. Any good allies, or whatever you want to call them, of any group will resist, and so then we fall back into sectarian, politics of identity. And so that's what I'm concerned about.
I just wanted to say, just really briefly, well, actually, first of all, I was looking off because there's the cutest baby deer in my driveway, so I was listening. I just want to let people know. But no, I just, on the thing about the sort of COVID social, being socially outcasted. I was actually having a conversation the other day about just kind of how raw the wounds still are for me. And I mean, in some ways, I feel like this stuff has been going on so long that a lot of us kind of feel like there's some distance from that first year, where it was if you spoke out, I know all of us had personal and professional friends and acquaintances and family and stuff cut us off to certain degrees. And I mean, it was kind of a long time ago, but it is in a lot of ways, for me as well, still raw. And that thing that you said about giving someone the benefit of the doubt, or at least being willing to have a conversation. And obviously you weren't here last week, Kenny, to continue that conversation, and I'm glad you're back this week. But yeah, it made me think too about I think part of what was so hurtful about some of those social situations was people cutting me off for one Facebook post, right? And just interpreting it the way they interpreted it, despite the fact that they'd known me for years, maybe decades. Or hearing something from someone who heard something from someone, and just not even asked, not even having a conversation. So it just kind of brought that back. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of us, there's a lot of sort of pressure almost, I feel in some of our anti-mandate communities to, at this point, kind of just be yep, I lost those relationships and that sucked, but now I'm good, and now I've forged these new, better relationships, and now I'm on this better path. And to some extent, I think that's true for some of us, but I don't know, it takes a long time to really heal from some of those times. So anyway, I don't want to go on too long because I want to get to our main content, but just wanted to say that.
All right. Well, I don't have any else further to say. Thanks, Kathy, for clarifying. And Andy, did you have anything else to say or not?
I do want to say this to people because we've been kind of going down this. So we've actually had a number of people follow us down this journey, episode 1, part 2, and I hope part 3, we've actually had a number of people view it. I thought these episodes I did think, Eduardo, that your story was going to have people watch it because they care about you, but I wasn't sure how much people would watch our second part. But I am grateful to an audience that kind of walks with us through this, because this isn't really, in many ways, that's not where things are at. I was thinking about the New York PSA on New York having a nuclear bomb. I've been thinking about Ukraine. I've been thinking about the global warming lockdowns that CNN is threatening to put on everyone. There's a lot of things going on. So we're kind of going into this area, which we are now going to find is very connected to the crap that's going on, even if you didn't think of it was before. So I appreciate that our audience is kind of just wandering with us as we kind of go through these other things, and hopefully
some people shared really personal stories in the comments, which was really cool. Just that there's that kind of trust and intimacy in this space, even though it's online and public and pseudo anonymous.
Yeah, agreed. So that's it.
All right. Well, I guess I mean, any of you can help me steer this ship where we're heading. I don't know. We've been all kind of handling this steering wheel. I think I guess we can start off with how we've been kind of, this is the climatic point of where I think the fears of where our future is heading to is an episode where we'll be discussing some of the real stuff that are happening in science fiction and films, and TV shows. I sent you all a document with some real life examples of stuff of companies working in different areas of this industry of sex tech, and this is a $30 billion industry. Like, it's, as you said, Jess, what did you say? It's like even more than what the drone industry is at.
Well, I was just quoting that crazy Australian lady, but yeah, she said that it's worth more than the drone industry, or it's projected to be worth more than the drone industry, like very soon. I forget.
Yeah.
I'm Bryony Cole. I run Future of Sex, which is a podcast, event series, and now a global hackathon, encouraging more people to get involved in sex tech, so the evolving worlds of sex and tech. The reason why I think it's so important people get involved in sex tech is, A, of course, everyone has sex and that's how we all got here, but also the industry potential is huge. You know, some people predict it's worth $20 billion by 2020.
So, I mean, I sent you all this an image that I hope Andy will be able to share.
You want me to put it on there right now?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently this industry is even bigger than the music industry too. Like,
oh Lord,
in terms of value. Yeah.
Wow. So so in this image that we're seeing here, for our listeners, if they could just take a moment and take off their headsets and stop washing dishes and look over at this poster, they could then see, like, there's a lot that's going on here. I was so engrossed in just many videos, and as well as looking up stuff that I hope that we can share here. But there's an area, there's the artificial intelligence area, which has to do with robots, right? Like, I think that's what most people think of the future, which has to do with folks buying an actual doll. And there are, if anyone watches one of the leading experts on the sex tech, which her name is, I put down, Bryony Cole, and she has a website called The Future of Sex. She talks about how there's even AI robots that have 12 different personalities. And then from there, we're going down to from augmented reality, which has to do with chips, that's still in the works, neural headsets and vibrating like penis implants. Then there's virtual reality with avatars and VR porn, and supposedly some of the companies that are using technology to improve sex and allow for holographic VR porn, or also for sex education in like a virtual reality space. Then there's remote sex, which, I think most people's initiation on that has to do with anything from like Skype or FaceTime, losing your virginity kind of sex, which is a huge number of teenagers are losing their virginity that way, FaceTime sex. And also which has to do with webcam shows, which I hope that I can talk about a little bit. Then there's the immersive entertainment, which has to do with like the haptic suits and goggles and all of the like sort of movement that you do with devices that are hooked up to you. Yeah. So, I mean, if you all look at for now, the areas of the future of sex, I'm amazed by what people's mind can get to. Like, I don't know if anyone wants to have any comments on what I just mentioned, because it's freaky in the sense that it's here and it's developing really fast. So I'm not sure if anything stood out from what I shared, or if you all want to comment on it.
Yeah, here's my recommendation, and I'll start. And I just think there's so much in here in these areas of virtual sex, remote sex, robots, immersive entertainment, augmentation, what this woman was showing in the future of sex landscape. Like, I would invite Jessica and Kenny just to pick one area out. Like, I'm looking at the robots, and here's the one I'm seeing: former lover doppelgangers. So what does that mean? That means first off, they're trying to help a person heal. I guess the idea is help a person heal by building a robot that looks like your former lover, that acts like your former lover, which really just means that you have to collect data on your former lover and make that former lover as accurate as possible through a virtual twin. I mean, again, it just looks to me like so many of these things, and we'll get more into this, because for me, this has nothing to do with sex. This has everything to do with surveillance. But the that is just one area I look at, which is going to be sold as healing, but which is actually about collecting all your data and making it so that everyone has their best virtual self, if you will, collected, so that some person can get the virtual lover doppelganger mate. Doppelganger is basically, if you didn't know, like a person. It's a creature which acts and speaks and behaves like somebody else, an exact replica.
I mean, I think for me, I'll pick the remote intercourse one for me if we're gonna pick out one of these. But I'll comment on what you're saying on AI. I mean, I understand that there are people. I was listening to that woman, Bryony, about folks needing to sort of maybe people who have PTSD or people who are isolated or people who want to have sort of an AI, seemingly real robot with them to heal them. I think that the problem with that is that that percentage is so small that most people are going to be using this for the not developing the social skills that they need to be able to go and meet real people in the real world, and to also deal with the fact that SEX is complicated. Things are complicated. There's a lot of interactions, and you have to be able to deal with the complexities of what it's like to be interacting with another human being. I know that there are issues with it, and that's why if we look at like traditional like ways of dealing with that in indigenous ways, you had people who consulted with in your community, and people in your community would help you deal with those issues, and they would give you either plans to deal with that, like if you had any sort of physical impotence, or if you had psychological issues, you'd have like counselors in your community, like elders. And I think like mental health is really important in our in our society, and that's not being addressed. I don't think that we can fix these issues through more AI or more like alternative well, in this case, robots. That's just my opinion. Like, it's just amazing how we don't really get to the root of the issue, which is our psyche and our psychology. Instead, we're trying to find ways to make, and I really do think that because I'm cynical about this, where people are really using people's intimacy issues to make profits. That's what this is for me.
Just to be clear, former lover doppelganger means that if Brandy breaks up with me, that I need to get a company that can collect as much data as they can on Brandy and create something that looks and acts like Brandy. That's what a doppelganger is. It's not like actually a healing mechanism. It is literally a company which is saying our product is making as good a replica of your mate and helping you heal from that.
Well,
Yeah.
I do just want to add, I mean, just the whole mental health and like inclusion thing, which I think one of the videos made that point, Eduardo, one of the things that you sent, I forget which one, about how like the first frontier of this in terms of how it's going to be sold or how it is being sold is through like for mental health or related stuff. But I mean, I have heard on many occasions, like when people want to justify like the porn industry or prostitution, the sex industry, all of it, oftentimes like the disabled, right, will be invoked as like, well, there are people who need this and rely on it. So I don't know, like it doesn't seem that much of a jump from just in terms of the framing. And I think, I guess, well, I don't know which one to pick here to kind of relate. There's so many, but okay, I'll pick under augmentation. I'll pick God, like any of these. Orgasm amplification. just kind of related to what you were saying, Eduardo, in terms of like selling this. Like one of the things that really strikes me, and I think it was the Australian lady who said, like, she was kind of being challenged in one of the audience questions, just about the broader effects on society and people's, not just their mental health, but like their sexual health and their intimacy with the actual people in their life. And she was like, it's up to us to decide if this is what we want as a society. Which, I don't know, that just stood out to me because I don't think it is. Like, I don't think that any of this is being left up to us to decide. Like, they create markets. They make these products, right? And then they shove the technology down our throats. They get people addicted to it. They already have all the precedents, all the research, right? Like with the porn industry and related industries. It's in a way like it's the opioid crisis. It's the vaccine passports. Like it's not up to us. Like the ruling class never asks permission. It's such a lie. And so just in terms of like selling a product, like orgasm augmentation, right? Like it's such a capitalist, even just the wording, right? And like so much of this industry, like looking at all the materials that you sent, Eduardo, like everything is like enhanced sexual lives, augmentation for pleasure, enhanced intimacy. It's always just like more. Like, gotta have more orgasms, gotta have amplified orgasms, got like everything. It's just like more, which is such a, it's just like capitalism, right? It's like nothing's ever enough. I mean, it makes me wonder if a lot of the people who are either funding this or sort of like the people, the small minority, well, I don't know how much of a minority it is, like in the beginning when they start to, they must have focus groups, right, and trials of some sort. But I just wonder, like, have any of these people ever actually experienced intimacy? Like, have they ever actually experienced real pleasure? Because to me, it's just, I don't know, like it sounds old fashioned and it's probably like right wing now, but it's like just regular sex, like with another human being, like under the right circumstances, right, with the right person, is like one of the most incredible human experiences available to us, right? Like same thing with it. Like, I don't know what an orgasm amplification tool, like is it not good enough? Like it's one of like the deepest pleasures, right? Again, like under the right circumstances, I understand like so much of this stuff has been just twisted, and both psychologically and then oftentimes physically, and so many of us have dealt with so much trauma in our lives that it comes to be associated for some people with pain and humiliation and all of those things that we were talking about last week. But it's just, I don't know, like just the selling of it. And there's actually, I think it's Jonah Mix, who's like a male anti-porn advocate. I remember reading something he wrote that talks about how porn is an orgasm delivery mechanism or something to that effect, which is basically saying like it's a product, right? So it's not even just like the tools and the apps and the toys and all of this, but it's like the actual experience itself becomes a product. And I think that's like one of the most horrifying things to me about that particular one under the augmentation section.
I just want to add, I think it's very interesting that you bring up this, the language that they use to sell us this stuff, right? It's not, to me, it's not that different than, the whole vaccine narrative. It's not different than bringing democracy and freedom to other countries. It's like, it's not different than, like, I guess what Jake talked about, how eugenics has been rebranded, right? In order to advance like synthetic mRNA bullshit to help people. And so I think they, tools of shoving shit down our throats without us in mass realizing that this is not about freedom or about a healthy lifestyle, in having self-determination in what we consider healthy for ourselves. This is what you've mentioned before, Jessica, market shaping. I wanted to pick on remote sex, full body telepresence. For me, that one stands out because, again, it's just, it also, I also related to the narrative on the issues with quote unquote climate change, right? That is up to the individual, that we have to be individually responsible for certain things, even though they're shoving a lot of shit down our throats that we really don't have a choice of. And so full body telepresence, that tells me that they're trying to bridge a gap of, why the fuck are we not in person? Why the hell are we not, and forget just COVID, why the hell do people have to travel to go to work, so far? Why do they have to spend so many hours away from their loved ones? That was the way they sold FaceTime, fucking Facebook or whatever the fuck, Apple, whatever, so you can stay connected with, but they put us in these very strenuous situations. This system and the entire system puts us in these strenuous situations, and they're selling us this idea that all these technologies are going to solve the issues of intimacy, and all the problems that the lack of intimacy create. And by intimacy, I don't just mean sexual intimacy, which is very profoundly important, but I mean intimacy with friends, with family, with community. In this society in itself, the ways we're being pushed, more isolated, is going to create, and they anticipate this industry. They know it's going to happen, because Japan is a good example, actually, where with there is a lot of how would I put it? There's a lot of issues with intimacy in terms of individuals, adults, and so technology for years. This is not new. Japan has a long history of technology mediating intimacy, or filling that gap that a very strict, highly capitalistic society. And the irony is that Japan also has very deep culture, right? But it has broken a lot of social relationships, and I do think it hints a little bit as to where we're heading. And no wonder that like in that video that you sent us, Eduardo, with that woman from Australia, right? That they were talking about this the hologram, right? Was it a hologram in a?
It was Gatebox.
Gatebox, yes, right, and replacing the actual thing, right? Like actually being present with someone, which I don't think enough fucking data or science can absolutely replicate what it feels like to be in person. Not fucking FaceTime, not Zoom. It can replicate and replace, because there are so many things that we take in as humans, right? And we were designed for that, or evolved for thousands of years, and they pretend to solve this. And again, it's just disgusting as to people who are trying to profit are and send their sales pitch people, right, to sell us bullshit in order to pretend like they care about our intimacy, when in reality a lot of this shit is just gonna create more problems and more markets for them, and to me, again, it goes back, like, that's why I call myself a communist. Not because of Stalin, Russia, or that bullshit, but because you have to be in community. It's fundamentally important for you as a human, to have a community around you, because that's what that's what we evolved to do, and to have a healthy life, or relatively healthy life. It's not perfect, but that's the other thing, right? Like they sell us these ideas of perfecting things or having control of things, when in reality is the complete opposite. We are going to lose more of ourselves, right? Our humanity, literally who we are, by giving our data, giving our control, giving our money, giving our time to all these mediators of intimacy.
You know what's immersive? Life. Real life is immersive. I just wanted to say that.
Well, let me go here. So we've covered like augmentation and robots and Kenny's talk about remote sex. If folks I'm going to share some links. So if folks want to see some of this stuff, they can check out one of the videos I sent you all about virtual sex, which has to do like viral play space. And they're inventing ways for anyone to sort of change their gender or become avatars or have sex with animals or even become a different person. And they're becoming like, this is a whole world that they're opening up. And it's strange. But if anyone has seen one of the episodes on Black Mirror from the point of view, like it was a story about like two guys playing a video game, and then one became a woman and another became a guy character, Asian characters. It's on this line of where do we, like it be like they lost their lives to this game, and they could not have sexual intimacy with their partners. And that's what I think this is going to do. This is going to limit people experiencing the real world as we're talking about. I don't see how this will improve people's intimacy when they're talking about like, oh, with your partner. If you look at the episode, really, people are really affected by it. And as we already know, I want to point out there's already a $1 billion industry in the porn industry, and people are already having issues. This is what we already know. Like I was going to mention that there's a like sexual attention deficit disorder where people are not able to perform, and they need to have like the stimulated visually through watching some sort of show that's sexually gratifying, right? And it's no longer focusing on themselves and how to improve themselves. So
can I ask, is that the Black Mirror episode? I just wanted to add, because I think it's part of this whole thing, isn't one of the characters, when they like go into virtual reality, they switch genders, right?
Yeah.
And they talked about that in one of I think it was the Australian lady as well, like another one of the things you can do, right, is to supposedly experience the opposite sex's sexual experiences, right? So it's like, I'm sure that the gender ideology and trans ideology industry is not gonna like love that at all. No, it's it's all kind of tied up, and it's especially for young people, right? Like so many people are already so confused about their orientation and feeling like their body is not, like they're in the wrong body or something, that there's something wrong with their body. And I just, you can totally see how going into VR and supposedly experiencing what it's like to be a man or a woman, or to have bigger breasts or a bigger penis or whatever, like every fetish under the sun would then deeply, deeply exacerbate that problem of feeling like your actual body is somehow flawed or not enough.
Yeah. And to add to the comment as well, to what Kenny's about remote intercourse, I heard her say constantly, like, this is the future, like, this is it. We're all having different lives. Like, our careers are going to separate us. We're in long distance relationships. This is it. So she didn't say get used to it. She just said, these are the things that are going to help us get through that. Like, maybe we should be discussing what other ways we can be more connected. Instead, this is it. Like, this is like, she's the expert on this. Like, this is it. Like, as a matter of fact, she's invested clearly. And anyone who pushed back, because there were people in the audience who were pushing back. If you see at the end, they're saying, isn't this going to affect, as Kenny had brought up about Japan's culture? And isn't this going to affect like Asian countries where they're already having isolation issues, or people who are already having issues around intimacy? And she's just like, well, the idea is for this to support and to create technology that's going to eradicate that. That's not going to create that. That's not it. She's just giving some baloney answer, right?
You know, Black Mirror sounds like this sci-fi, right, scary, entertaining thing, but in that episode that Jessica and Eduardo are talking about, they use this device that connected directly to the brain, right? And this is the intentions of Neuralink, right? Elon Musk. This is also research that DARPA is doing, to go directly into the brain. And so it sounds again far-fetched, conspirational, whatever the hell, to people who think that this is too kooky, but we're in the threshold of a lot of this stuff becoming just omnipresent, right? And also like I think I've said it before, but like it doesn't even if it doesn't fully materialize, just like this each step forward in that direction causes big ripples in society, not just society but individuals and their mental health and their sense of self. I think we're already seeing some of the effects of that, but I guess more technology, right?
I mean, personally, first of all, Eduardo, I really appreciate you bringing the attention to all these links, and we will include them in the description, because people, you have to watch them yourself to really get the full appreciation. We're just taking, we can't here convey all the different, really, for me, disgusting ways in which the fact that we are all so alienated in society is being capitalized on to deepen our alienation. And I personally think we're giving these people way too much credit to speak of it in terms of, wait a second, this isn't going to heal these wounds. Because look, when we talk about COVID, we know we cannot talk about health. It has nothing to do with health. It's about surveillance, data collection, developing AI, and conditioning humans for lockdown and control. Same with EdTech.
And censorship.
And censorship. Well, but it's about control. It has nothing to do with health. Same with EdTech. Has nothing to do with education. It's about control, data collection, AI production. It's about essentially replacing workers, education workers. We're replacing health workers. And you can see here now, none of this is about sex. None of this is about people being alienated in sex under capitalism because of gender roles or whatever, or because of abuse, because of all the pressures, whatever that capitalism has helped, all the problems it's helped create. This is not about even trying to solve them. This is about surveillance. This is about control. This is about conditioning people. And it's ultimately about collecting all the data that will allow all workers to be replaced. And in this case, they promise it with, there's another one on there, sex avatar workers. So anybody who's doing webcamming right now is going to be replaced. And last, what this means is every one of our interactions, people providing a pleasure response, people receiving a pleasure response, all of that goes through the funnel of a data collected center, every one of it. And that's what this is so important, because they are attempting to, like, whether or not they can simulate humans, they're intending to do it. So when we say, oh, you can't do that, we're going to try. And we're not going to try to make you heal from sex. We're going to try because we're replacing every one of you motherfuckers because you cost more money just to exist. Now, I think that in itself is going to create a crisis for capitalism that the capitalists won't be able to resolve, because I believe profits comes from human labor. But that doesn't stop them from saying that we must replace human labor with machinery, because that is how profits are come by. That's what all this is about. It comes down to the same thing. And I don't think we're making a mistake to even invite ourselves to put it in the lens through which she is putting that jerk Australian. Her name is Bryony Cole, to even invite the idea that she is even attempting to address that. Now, is she a fourth industrial revolution, Klaus Schwab person? No, I don't know, but she is right in line with that process, which is going to make the world much more dangerous place for workers everywhere.
Well, and it's so disgusting too, because she frames it through like, oh, like I didn't get like a good sexual education growing up. No shit, right? Like she's a woman, so she grew up being denied information about her body and being denied pleasure and all of this stuff. And yet like she's framing so much of this stuff through like, oh, like it's women creating these devices and like I think she has her own company or something. So yeah, she might not be on the level of Klaus Schwab, but like she has a serious, right, like personal investment in this entire industry. And it goes right along with like all of this framing is like it's inclusive, it's feminist, like oh my gosh, like women are developing products so that they can get more pleasure, right? It's so progressive. Or we're going to target people who've experienced trauma, or they're disabled, or they're lonely, like they need this companionship. And yeah, like maybe it's not ideal, but like what is just oh, like it's not about whether it's like ideal, it's about whether it's better than nothing, right? And it's like, I mean, my mind is like, is it better than nothing? Like, are you actually helping these people heal? I don't think so. I think you're giving them totally false solutions, just like in every other area of our society. Like solar panels are not a solution to climate change, and yet that's what's being pushed down our throats. Vaccines are not a solution to people having really poor health, and yet that's what's pushed. That's what's framed as healthy. And then you have this whole world where it's like, oh, like women aren't having enough orgasms, or not enough women are able to orgasm. So let's solve that through like porn or prostitution or some device. People feel bad about their bodies, so let's let's encourage them to medically transition and chop off their breasts or have a cavity cut into them. What was the one, the female condom that she talked about with like
rape,
like the rape or hammer or something? It's like a female condom with barbs coming out of it. This is their fucking solution to rape culture, is a female condom with barbs coming out of it. Or like men having unprecedented rates of erectile dysfunction, right? In part because of how pervasive the porn industry is. The solution is not for them to just start having sex with only robots instead of people, or like, oh, like people in sexless marriages, this way like they can experience sexual gratification. No, that's not, like, a sexless marriage plus tech is not the solution to a sexless marriage. Like, it's all just like fake market driven solutions.
And it again brings me back to the whole arguments about climate change, quote unquote, because like it's all about more technology. Let's never address the fucking people who are polluting and destroying the building blocks of life, and who want to quantify and profit off of it. Never mind that, sexual dysfunction or whatever the fuck, because I also have questions about that kind of language, honestly, because there's also a market for that shit. But never mind that people are fucking stressed out at each other's throats, or like, having all sorts of mental issues, right? Prior to COVID, now even worse. Never mind again the source of all this fucking misery that they pretend, misery, destruction, and pollution that they're trying to correct, or they're claim to want to correct. There is no interest in that. And I actually think maybe we're being a little too kind on her. I do think she's fucking in the same room as Schwab, because she knows all these fucking devices are sensors, to collect our data, like you said, and to funnel it. That's where the money is. You know what I mean? Like any capitalist who doesn't know this is a fucking chump. That's where the money is now. It's about data mining every aspect of our lives, including our sexual habits. And also selling us, right? Just like we talked about in the episode about health, selling us, the bullshit that we need to do in order to correct the shit that's wrong with us. So they tell us the problem, and they also sell us a solution. And so it's completely out of our hands. And that's, that to me is like a wrap in terms of our humanity and the human experience, really. And this is also very insidious, because as problematic as sex is and dysfunctional and all that shit, is still a very fundamental part of the human experience, I think. And weirdly, I think that there's other ideas that kind of prime us for this moment, because they also brought up the whole issue of fucking overpopulation. You fucking kidding me? She said you can have sex with a robot and you will die and you will not procreate. You know, what kind of maniac, right? Like does that kind of shit and says that kind of shit, and you know, and that is fucking just diabolical. You know
Well,
that.
also to just throw in really fast, the like for China, and I think one of the guys who asked a question in one of the panels brought this up, but like because they have tried to institute like state controlled population control, right? Like they have they have a weird situation where they have like all these men and not enough women. I mean, not that everybody's obviously seeking a heterosexual partnership, but that's like part of why you have all of these lonely men who feel like, oh my God, like I can't find a woman if that's what they want. So you can already see like the way that that kind of like top down population control feeds right into this shit.
And so it's like such an intersection of things, you know, this topic that, you know, and it's just so insidious, right? Because it's just one more element of what makes us human. And, you know, because we talked about health, we talked about, you know, bodily autonomy, we talked about psychology for kids and, you know, and adults. And now we're talking about, you know, one of the most vulnerable places for most people, right? Which is, you know, having sex with someone else, you know, and sharing that connection, you know, hopefully if you have a relatively healthy, you know, sexual experience.
If I may, I just wanted to quickly talk about, as it relates to me being here in Colombia, just a little bit, because I'm still here. I'll be back in late this summer, back in San Francisco. It started off as porn, like the porn industry, like this, going into this virtual or looking at or isolating us into our lives where we are now just focused on self-stimulation by ourselves, and then it's like this industry with the streaming services that has then gained momentum, and that also has another billion-dollar industry. And just my experience here, they're treating workers like these, just the needs for people, like they're avatars, or like they're just some like dolls that they could just use for to be interactive with the users on the other side. And they go through these like 12-hour shifts, and then they have to sleep at the studio, and then they work again. And then if they have to, like, these experiences that I've been hearing from folks here, just the abuse that they receive from the monitors, and the abuse from the people owning the studios, and the abuse from the users, and then having to still make lots of money to be able to serve the users. It just, to me, it's like, my goodness, I don't have that level of, I've never experienced that level of like having thousands of users watch you, like on a television, like you're like one woman show, to be able to deal with that many users and the critics and the comments that happen. So if I was to be on a television show, already I feel nervous when I'm like on what's left, right? Imagine having thousands and thousands of people like watching you virtually, and you having to perform for lots of them, and you have to strip down and then still have sex with another person, like a colleague of yours, if that's what's requested of you, or if you're being made to humiliate yourself. So some people, for example, experience like burning wax on themselves, or having to vomit, or having to make themselves bleed, or having to do something really kinky, or tie themselves upside down and stay there for like 30 minutes. Like, these are some of the things that people are asking and requesting. So I know people's minds can wander way far. And then if you're not able to meet those needs, that's why these virtual like reality things are supposedly able to meet those fetishes. But it's all just in the world of the change of sex, like this evolution of how this industry is working. And as Jessica was asking in one of her questions before, like, how has it changed since? It's like it's changed to the point where now we're stuck with our screens stuck to our faces, and we're having to self-stimulate 6 times a day. Some people do that. And then suddenly you have no desire, or you don't have any way to meet your partner's needs or be with another person. Like, these things affect you and your psyche. Like, they really do. There's a whole like mental health section around like how pornography is really affecting a lot of people in their psyche. So I don't know. I'm mentioning this because it's another aspect of remote sex, and it's an area where I'm constantly concentrated on because I'm here in Colombia currently, and I'm obviously being shared these stories with me, and I just thought I just comment on it as we're talking about sex tech and the evolutionizing industry of sex work as well. I don't know. And that's just something I wanted to mention quickly as we're discussing this topic.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I've been thinking about some of the dangers that you highlighted for people in Colombia. That would be true for it's not a safer medium, right? Because the other end user, you had talked about how that other end user could use all sorts of mechanisms to go find that person and things like that. And so it revealed to me that it just changed the danger. It changed the nature of the danger in terms of the person who is what we would call the prostitute in one case, or the person who's using those services in between that transaction. And that was the sense of the danger.
Model and user. Model and user.
Model and user.
Prostituted person and John, either one.
But the thing that I think is lost in all this, again, I feel like I have to come back to, is that now that has changed. It's like we had this title of the episode 1 that you had, Eduardo, was the most dangerous virus is the state. Because now we're talking about not the model and the user. Now we're talking about a road that connects them. And in that road is a data road. But who controls that road? Who watches that road? Whose road is that? That's not my road. That's not your roommate's road. That's not the user's road. That's the state's road. And the state gets to know exactly who's walking that road, who provided one picture, who's watching those pictures, and the state gets to decide how they're going to use that. Now, before we even talk about this, WikiLeaks revealed Vault 7, right? Vault 7 was how the CIA will fucking plant shit on you and fuck your life up. They'll put shit on your computer and make your life a hell if you decide to do something. Well, what does this mean? What this means is now the state has every single transaction, because it's very interesting that all the questions that the woman was asked, no one asked about privacy. I don't think they didn't ask about privacy because they didn't think about privacy. It was assumed it didn't exist. In the back of their mind, they already know it's gone. That's how I look at it. And what we have created is literally a giant trap that it's like, my mom's property, there are these giant traps for flies to fall into, and they fly in so they don't go on the horses. The state and corporations have produced a giant data trap that all of us are now funneling into, that they can actually use our real actions to control us, to blackmail us, to bribe us. We all become essentially Jeffrey Epstein's bitch in one way or another. But now it's like, well, you better watch what you do, let alone the fact that even if you do keep off all those sites, you've got Vault 7 and the CIA can plant the shit on you. But this just means that they have it all now. They have everything they need to say, if you get out of line, we already know everything you've done. Now, that's not the reason for it. I still believe the reason for it is because they are trying to simulate human activity. They are trying to create better AI. They are trying to essentially maximize profits and maximize the position of their own imperial powers, China, Russia versus US. That's what I feel this comes down to. And whoever can develop their porn industry fastest is much more likely to be able to get to sink the ships in the Pacific. So whoever has the most thriving porn industry will be better at sinking the aircraft carriers with the AI that they develop by virtue of it. That's how people have to understand this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and it follows straight from like the way that military prostitution and just armies in general, right, have like completely fueled the industrialization of the sex industry.
Yeah, and the last thing, because it's not a throwaway. Every one of these technologies that we talk about wasn't built by the porn industry. It wasn't built by education. They're all DARPA shit. It's all military tech. Sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
No, it's fine. I just, yeah, like since you like bringing up Epstein and all of that, and it's like, and yet Hunter Biden can have all of this child porn on his computer and no one fucking cares, right? Anyway, that was kind of a side note, but I just wanted to bring up like the thing about data and privacy, which like they pretty much tell you right out. Like I was looking at the, what is it called? The VURBL play space that you sent, the website, the like, well, I'll just read the description of it on their website. So this is something Eduardo had shared with us in preparation for this website. VURBL Play Space aims to create safe, exploratory virtual experiences where touch is encouraged, playfulness is required, and privacy is guaranteed. So it's like right in their mission statement, right? Like this idea that like you can have privacy through the portal of this app on your iPhone or whatever, right? It's total double speak. Even like the part about touch is encouraged, right? They say, I think, touch is encouraged. Feel what makes us human. Feel a part of what makes us human. So it's like just such double speak, right? It's like up is down, where's peace, and AI and robots are what make us human, and apps on our iPhone are what is gonna give us safe privacy guaranteed. It's just insane.
I just want to connect those things in terms of when we had that episode of about Jeffrey Epstein, I think, and we talked about how organizations like the CIA or FBI and these institutions we know very well about, they use the sexual proclivities of the rich and powerful to wield power, right? That's one element. And so here we have the infrastructure for that same tactic to be used against anyone who dares to dissent, from any official state, and honestly, like you said, Lipson, it doesn't even matter if it's true or not because they can just plant some shit. And, and like the sense of reality is getting more and more distorted. I think people think it's freedom. On the contrary, our sense of the world, I think, is very distorted. People who live in the U.S. now have a less sense of the world than before. Even though we claim that this is a global fucking, that technology gives us opens the windows to the world. I actually think it's the opposite. And not only that, but like I wanted to also bring up this article about that I saw through Jimmy Dore, but it's by Meet Press. The title of the article is "Meet the ex-CIA Agents Deciding Facebook's Content Policy," and so that shit is riddled with like bunch of people from the state apparatus that are again, the government doesn't have to directly do what stereotypical dictators do in other countries, right? Like, we'll cancel the fucking press, we'll send these people to jail, and that is where we're heading, right? Like now, like you said, Lipson, we have this road that has been created. Now someone is going to manage access and flow through that, and also obviously surveil in the name of safety, in the name of privacy. They're gonna use that to wield power. And again, our private, the most private of things that most people hold, right? Because it's even a taboo for a reason, I think. Our sexual habits now are completely exposed. And then like in that same woman from whatever her name is, Cole, her last name, right? Oh yeah, that we need basically rules or whatever, or that we need to decide or blah, 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 bullshit. I've heard that. I also heard that from Facebook. That a dude that was interviewed for this article about the CIA,
She said regulation over and over again every time. She said, "Oh, well, this it'll need to be regulated. It'll need to be regulated."
And so that sort of like appeals to, I think, someone with like political naivete, I guess, in the sense of it doesn't matter once the technology is created, the legal framework doesn't fucking matter. That's why the ACLU is another liberal bullshit that like just paints this idea of safety and control of citizenship, because it doesn't matter. Just like they can use the databases of license plates to find undocumented workers. They don't have to use that to mount a case, but they will definitely use that shit to find your ass. Like they don't have to use everything legally in order to be used, and then drone your ass or cancel your cryptocurrency or unallow you to access certain spaces or leave the country or leave the city, or use that scooter that needs a QR code or use that car that you're going to rent, or access that store that where you have to use your iPhone to pay because cash is there's no coins anymore. You can't even use coins, and so again, it's all these things are connected. Their implications are massive, and I don't see a separation from the other topics that we've talked about. It's still data, it's still surveillance, it's still control. And this is in the context of the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of humanity that is still going on. That we've talked about NAFTA, we talked about with Allison about indigenous people, we talked about African slaves, right? And the pattern here that we've talked about too is that in order to force people to be part of a new system, you have to immiserate people. You have to dispossess people in order to be part of new systems. And so all these things are in play. And this is just another angle, right, that I think we're exploring in terms of this whole fourth industrial revolution bullshit that is happening and moving forward pretty steadily. And it has accelerated through the last couple of years.
I mean, I don't have much to say except that if people don't think that this is real, I'll just mention a few of the companies that are doing this stuff so that people can realize like this is not something we're just like talking about like, oh, the future is there, like what's happening here. And I appreciate, Andy, when I said to you over the phone, I said to you, have you seen that Black Mirror episode? And you said, oh, well, that's a show, but I'm asking like what real stuff can you give us that's happening, like real world stuff? And I thought about that question. And so that's why I made this list. So these are real life examples of companies designing sex tech. Like we're heading there. So Dildidonics, which connect you with a partner, a lover, anyone to have remote sex. There's Harmony AI. People look up this stuff. Like I'm just mentioning these companies' names. I'll just give you a brief description and then you can look into it further. There are going to be sites that you can just Google this stuff. No? Harmony AI, the first sex-capable AI that has 12 different personality types. And apparently, as Bryony has said, that she or he could also give you poetry, like to recite poetry to you. Gatebox AI, which Kenny had brought up, the holographic AI, which if you want to YouTube that and see what that virtual girlfriend is like, similar to Alexa and Google Home and Amazon Echo, but way more interactive. And they're making a US-American version of it. Then there's Mend, an AI chatbot, which helps you get through a heartbreak and monitors your heart and checks in on you to see how you're doing. There's BIEM. It's a virtual sexual health clinic where you can post your STI and share with partners that you're being with. I mean, I think that's more of control about and more about invasion of your privacy. Then there's Second Life and Red Light Center that let people create avatars and have sex with other avatars. And you can be like all these animals. Biohacker Richly invented this vibrating penis called the Lovetron 9000. And it's an implant that you can insert beneath a man's pubic bone. I don't know. I think that's going to really affect people's way of having sex. And it's always this enhancement, right? It's like, it reminds me of the way that we're trying to enhance people's intelligence. Then there's Real Doll Company, another doll company that is working to download human consciousness onto them. And people will be able to design their own sex bots based on their partners or celebrities, which similar to what you were talking about, doppelganger, Andy. Also, I imagine if you break up with someone, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was just talking about dolls in general when you brought that up. But yes, I mean, how weird and freaky is that? You can't get over someone. You're just going to create a replica of them, right? Then there's virtual sexology. Supposedly, this is the virtual reality to help people with sex ed, because according to Bryony, people have had shitty sex education in school. So why don't you immerse, teenagers into a virtual reality simulation and have them have sex so that they can learn about sex? So have artificial or virtual sex so that you can be better at sex. Then there's OMG Yes, which is virtual touchscreen technology, teaching women how to orgasm and for their partners. I mentioned in the first the part one of this series, which has to do with my experience. I just said that I had gone to Santa Cruz where I had learned about, and that was more interactive, people, life experiences, women-led workshops, and talking about orgasms and the women's vagina and the anatomy of that. I think those are the kind of things we should be having instead of having this virtual touchscreen technology teaching women how to have orgasm. And this is also data collection, by the way. That OMG Yes collects data on people, on women. And that's how they have those stats and everything. So I wanted to mention those examples. If anyone doubts, oh, it's too far into the future, or you're talking about Black Mirror episodes. Those are sci-fi shows. What are you talking about? No, this stuff is happening. So I agree that, yes, this is mostly motivated by the military. And this is a Trojan horse for many people who are going to be doing these innovative technologies that are only going to serve the government for more cynical things. So we would be kidding ourselves that these are going to solve our sexual issues. That's what I really have found this to be. And having been a sex worker, I'll just say, the sexual issues that most people have, I've realized have come along, have been a lot around our stigma and a lot around our insecurities, and also this sort of ideal way of what men should be like or women should be like. And I mean, that's part of it, and it's not the whole thing, but it really is a change in our culture that we have to deal with, and the roots of our psyche and our psychology. And also people have had a lot of traumatic experiences. Mental health is important, and we're not going to deal with it through SexTech. So I guess that's it for me. I don't have any other comments around this. We've kind of made these episodes now 2 hours when we used to fight for 20 minutes, and now they become 40 minutes and then 1 hour. And then after that, 1 hour and 10. And then our longest episode, 1 hour and 30. And then after that, 2 hours. So I hope that eventually we get back to 1 hour. But that's where I'll stop.
We invited Allison on, and it was like 4 hours.
Right.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
So,
I have a more of a rhetorical question, which is first of all, I think the best capitalists are in the business of addiction. And second, given that fact, at least for me, how much time are we going to spend connected to all these technologies, right? And these different aspects of our lives. And so how much time are we going to have to really spend with nature, with people, in physical spaces, right? It's because we're set up with so many traps, to keep us in and this is why I worry about those kids, right? That, from school, they're starting to, and then of course they're gonna have a PlayStation, and the PlayStation has a VR set, and the VR set, you can access, again, pornography and whatever, but again, it's just in work is gonna be, remote, more and more, and so, and there we go. How far-fetched is to think that is not the movie The Matrix, and it's just a scary thought, and once you put all these pieces together, and I know I have some awareness, right, of this, and I'm still using some of this, the iPhone, or obsessively reading some shit, Even if it is to fight the system, I'm still hooked on the phone. And so then again, I worry about the next generation, and I don't know. It's just a sad prospect, and I guess I still try to value the moments of real interaction and real intimacy, of those sorts. With people in real spaces, in the real world, and yeah, I mean, I just hope that older people see that, and especially the young ones, and I don't know. Yeah, it's so disheartening.
Kenny, our generation, the millennial generation, and younger generation are having. I saw a statistic. They're having, this is real, having less physical intercourse. They're having
Exactly what
less
I was
physical
gonna say. And it's true. Like, I spend most of my days with 18 to 22-year-olds, and like, they're not having sex. And I'm not saying like, oh, everybody should just be having sex nonstop and like, yes, consent, all of that, but like,
I mean,
it's not unrelated.
And it's like, I wonder how much is that the pleasure overload, not just of porn, not just of that, but like video games and all this shit that the Instagram, the feed on your, giving you bits of gratification all day.
The TikTok, fast paced, just,
yeah.
And I read one of I think it was a written interview with the Australian robot lady, who none of us seem to be able to remember her name. And one of the questions on there, they said, "Are you working on any exciting new projects?" And she replied, "Yes, we are releasing soon a new app for couples called the Wheel of Foreplay. It is basically a game to get couples to use technology in the best possible way, where they can play games, put the phone down, and engage with each other." So you need an app in order to put your phone down. I mean,
well, I guess I'm going to say something maybe a little controversial here, because it used to be in the left, and maybe Jessica, you might have heard this. There was a kind of a moment at a time, and we've always said the youth are our future. That's kind of a giveaway or a throwaway thing. But in the progressive movements, the left was often very much like, what are young people doing? Oh, young people are coming up back to fight this. And in that, there was often this sense of hope and optimism, because in a sense, it was saying people who are older are done. This is not going to be fought by an older generation. This is going to be fought by a younger generation. It wasn't true then, because the younger people I felt like they were easily suckered and drawn into the Democratic Party. That's my feeling about it. And I personally think it's less true now. Like, I think the young are done. I think they are caught, they are trapped, they are drugged, they are vaccinated. And if we think the young are going to get us out of this, we're fucked. Because it is up to people who actually know that there's a different way, that there is a different time. And that other time was fucked. But at least we understood the thing you're talking about, Kenny, which is we have to get back to this thing that they've destroyed. Touch, feel, taste, smell. And not through the virtual world, but in the actual real world. And I don't think young people, I think young people they're masking up. They've already kind of, by and large, bought into it. And I was thinking of trying to find it right here. Like, if I show people in my class this thing right here, let me see if I can find it. Hold on, sorry. This was, because I see it on the fucking highway all the time, not here. This.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I show people in my class this thing, this says privacy, the iPhone, in this picture, we've all seen on the highway. And I go, is this privacy? If I even said to them, this actually shows you this is not privacy, I don't think any of my students would be able to tell me why this is not privacy. Because what they think privacy is the fact that since we can't see the person on their side, that person has privacy. But what is between them? There's a fucking phone. There's a phone right now basically turning that person's entire face into triangles and mapping the whole goddamn thing. And that is the opposite of privacy. So what they've been able to do, they are so confident they've got us fucked and hook, line, and sinker into this, that they can put this picture up in front of our face and call it and tell us this is privacy, saying we're mapping every goddamn thing you're doing, and we're going to call that privacy. So I I don't think the youth are like, at least I'll just call it into terms of a blue state Bay Area. The youth are not the answer here. They're done. They're cooked. And it's going to be people, older people, people who know a different way are going to have to figure it out and try to lead those folks out, because the young people have already been Pied Pipered out of the city.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that like it's not necessarily the youth's fault. I mean, they have been, in my opinion, the primary target. Like, capture of the youth has been ingenious primary goal. Like, when it comes to climate agenda, sexual exploitation, like all of it, psychological manipulation. You know, I mean, they don't care about like 80-year-olds. Clearly, they just shoved them all into nursing homes and let them die, right, during COVID.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that that's not their fault. It is ours. The one person who went up there who gave this fawning question to Bronwyn Cole, the Australian woman. Did you notice the only person who was like, "Tell me how I could find out more"? What was her goddamn job? She was a teacher. She was like, "How do I find out more about this?" I was like, "You motherfucker!" It was like.
Thank you very much. I'm so thankful that you brought this topic here. I'm a teacher, so I find sex education one of the most important things. So mine is more of a request than a question, because I wanted to come in person to ask you about all the sex ed availabilities, websites, and things like that. But then I thought that it might not be interesting only for me, but for everyone else. Mm-hmm. So my request would be that, can we put it somewhere, the web page of the Brain Bar or somewhere available for us, so that we as teachers, parents, or anybody could use in sexual education?
It's embarrassing, but the students, the young people, are not responsible for this. We created this problem. We, who should have been doing better, created this problem, and I personally think we're the only way out.
I wanted to add one thing. This is a little bit of a departure, but I think it relates. This is back on the VURBL play space thing that Eduardo had sent. And this was I think Kenny said something a few comments ago about, correct me if I don't get this right, Kenny, but I think you said something about the normalization and the industrial efforts to kind of like normalize ruling class sexual proclivities or something like that. I don't know if you're...
I was talking about the CIA using the sexual proclivities of people to manipulate the rich and powerful.
Got it. Because I was just taking a really surface level look at this example, right, of like one of these companies, is it an app, Eduardo? Or I don't even know. It's a play space, a virtual play space, whatever that means.
That can be enhanced through these virtual goggles if you have them. But I mean,
right, and it can hook up to all these different devices and
the haptic. And oh my goodness, yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say something else. Go ahead.
I'll be brief, but I just went to they have a section called experiences, and they give you kind of like a preview of some of the avatars that you can interact with, right? And the first one on there. Okay, so the name is Emmy, Chains of Fate, okay, and you can play, I guess you can be this avatar, or you can interact with this avatar, and you can do it male or female, and this is the description. Emmy is a vampire girl from Siberia. She's the dead daughter of an infamous mad scientist who secretly returned her to life via experimental tech. It worked! But now she needs to consume blood to survive and live alone in the darkness, away from sunlight. She likes video games, raves, and lewd, kinky orgies to thrive and feel alive. I know it's so ridiculous, but I mean, think about what that just is. The first avatar on there, right? It's straight up necrophilia, right? It's transhumanist, right? She's the product of a mad scientist. Oh, what brought her back to life from the dead? Tech, right? Like, it's just like too perfect. Drinking blood. I mean, and I don't want to get into all this sort of like crazy ritualistic allegations against many, many, many members of the ruling class, but I mean, come on. Yeah, Yeah.
I wanted to add one more thing that, like, okay, we're talking about these technologies produced for, sexual activities, right? And if you if you think that you're safe because you're not buying this technology, you're buying that up, that your private sexual life is safe, you're wrong, because they can literally listen to your shit. Like, people suspect this, but it's actually true. Like, Facebook has a patent for fucking using, your TV, or the room, or like listening to your fucking commercials, whatever, listening to your life, like through your phone. Even when your microphone is turned off, they can use the fucking gyroscope to use it as a microphone. The fucking Roomba in the room, they can also use the sensors of the Roomba as a microphone, and it can be translated into audio. So there is, this is one aspect of the masses, the shit that they use to surveil us. It's not just the fucking phone, it's every technology that we have nowadays, the Internet of Things, right? Any of those things can be weaponized to capture, our private moments, our private life. And so even if we don't have a fucking iPhone, if you have a Roomba or some sort of sensor that tracks your part of your life, any of that can be weaponized for anything, and collect your shit. And so it's not just about the sex industry or the telehealth, it's about a bunch of things. And I think, you're right, it's a responsibility, not just for, definitely not the young, not, I think they will play a role. They will have to. They're in the game too. But yes, the people who know the world from before, I think we have a responsibility, and like, we can't just check out and disappear, or make our own community and fuck everyone else. You can, whatever, but I don't know. I think that there is something there for us to do, and I don't know what it is, but fuck, speaking out is the beginning, I guess.
Well, and even just like, it's not just escaping it technologically, but culturally as well. Even without all of this crazy augmented shit, like, try being a 25-year-old woman who wants to find a partner who doesn't watch porn. I know women in this situation, and they say it's like, it feels impossible. And like, yeah, okay, to some people it's like, well, everybody does it or whatever, but like, if that's, kind of like Eduardo was saying earlier, like, it's not just fantasy. Like, there's not this like super concrete line. Like, this stuff affects people's psychology. It affects their relationships, the way that they relate to other human beings, even outside of sexual and romantic relationships, like, right down to just like your physiology. Like, it affects people. And so I feel really scared for the young people coming up.
I think that intimacy is the key here. Like, having intimacy with people in community. I think that's the only, like, I remember talking about going to bury my cousin in Canada, and the kids, at the wake or whatever, they were on their iPads creating avatars of themselves. And then my partner, she took it upon herself to go play with them and get them off the fucking iPad, and like, build things and jump over things, and I think that's what it's gonna take, like, show people, kids and young ones, other ways of connecting and finding joy, and or just being human, like, even being vulnerable, like, in person, and teaching them that courage, to be a multidimensional person, in real life.
People who can relate to other humans, and also who are willing to be in nature and seek that out. Because one thing I've noticed, like, when I do teach like some women's studies and like feminist literature classes, and the students who know the most about sex, just like physiologically, like sex and birth and everything in that realm, you know who they are? They're the students that grew up on farms. because they've seen animals, like they've seen animals give birth, and they understand pollination of crops and all of this, right? Like it's everywhere. So I think that's a huge part of it too. It's like being in relation to other humans and being in relationship to nature.
One thing I would want to note is I've noticed that this episode, there's so many bad shit we've covered, so much. We've talked about Ukraine and Russia. We talked about what's going on in education. We've talked about what's happening in medicine, and COVID frustrates the fuck out of me. But honestly, this stuff, Eduardo, that you asked us to go into, has been the most upsetting one to me. Like, I don't know why, but this one has gotten under my skin the most, as a sense of how deep the parasite has gotten into the organism. And created a lot of fear for me, because what feels at stake, in a way, I think it's gotten me to feel that what's at stake is honesty. What's at stake is intimacy. What's at stake is vulnerability, and what's at stake is love and connection. And like this feels like the hypersonic missile launched by them to just blow that shit up. And I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm not going to stop doing it, but I feel like Kenny, like it feels very menacing and very already deep in on the organism.
Keep teaching at the park, Lipson.
Yes. But I'm glad we covered it. It's just interesting that an area that I don't actually know that much about is the one that I find that's personally upsetting me the most about all this. Yeah.
I wanted, before we ended, just to harken back to something that really stuck out to me that I remember from our part 1 episode when Eduardo was sharing his story. And I just remember one of the things that you said when you talked about like going into these experiences. Like you said, I'm not very good at being robotic with people. And I just, I'm not saying like, not endorsing like prostituting people or whatever, but I think like, that's it, like in a nutshell. We shouldn't be robotic with each other.
Exactly.
There's an aspect of this work I do believe should exist, like sexual surrogacy, which it's another topic to delve into. But, there are people who are not able to have sexual experiences just because people are not attracted to them. And you can have maybe some workers that are going to be able to do this kind of work. Mm-hmm. And that has to be not in the way that it is now, where it's underground. I think it's more of like community-based, but like folks in Santa Cruz discussing workshops and talking to people and sharing ideas and getting together and meeting up and having these ceremonies and etc. But anyhow, we'll delve into we're going off topic. So I think we should wrap up. Well, all right. So that concludes the series of the sex industry and sex tech. And I hope people enjoyed it. And it really wasn't my idea. It was sort of like kind of sprung out because we discussed my time here in Colombia. And so obviously like it kind of happened this organically, but I didn't think we were going to have a series of parts like this, but it became too long of an episode and we had it this way. So thank you for joining this discussion, anyone that has listened this far. And if you have reached this far, congratulations for listening to more than 2 hours of episode. Someone messaged me and they said, I finally finished the entire episode. Thank you so much for sharing on that. And I was thinking, oh God, you shouldn't have.
Put it in 1.5 speed.
Yeah, you can, or do what I do, 2 speed.
Oh, that's too much. That's robot level.
Well, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenge in the mainstream left. We're going to change that in the future. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes where we found this episode or on our blog at what-s-left.webnode.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notification to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, Bitchute, Odysee, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. And if you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. You can find any of those links that I have mentioned where we found this episode. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-hosts Jessica, Kenny Cepeda, Andy Lipson. Thank you very much. And you can always write to any of us on our handles at Don Eduardo Barca or at ZepDKE. That's Kenny's Instagram. And I don't know if you want to share yours, Jess, or if you even have one. I don't think you do.
I have a Twitter. It's jhomie89. JHOLMIE 89.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you. And we'll catch you next time. Ciao.